Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and today we need to talk about the wildly unpredictable mess that has been the Eastern Conference this entire season. If you told me before the year that the Cavs were going to be on pace for 70 plus wins, that the Pistons would be a top 6 seed, and the Sixers would have the same number of wins as the Brooklyn Nets right now on March 16th, I would have called you insane. But here we are, and guess what? All three of those things are true. It has been really a underrated, weird conference. I feel like everybody talks about the West and the chaos there, not nearly enough about the East. So today, I want to break it down where everybody's at, where everybody's going, what it looks like for the playoffs, and ultimately, what could come from what we've seen this season out East over the course of this upcoming summer, because I think it's going to be a very pivotal one for a lot of teams in that conference. So let's get into it, starting off at the top with that juggernaut Cavs team. Nobody thought they were going to be this good. If you thought they were going to win 70 games, I think you're lying. Or maybe you're just the most optimistic Cavs fan ever, and you ended up being right. But most people wouldn't have told you that they were going to get anywhere close to this. But here they are. They've got a real chance to become the third team to ever do that. They are a contender in every sense of the word. I feel like the only reason people think that they might not be contenders is because they haven't done it before. And I always hate that argument. Oh, we've got to see them do it first. Every team has to do it first. Like, that's just a universal truth. But why not, take what you see in the regular season and what they've done to try and project a little bit? That's the whole point of analyzing and talking about the game. It's the same stuff I see with the Thunder. So I apologize that I'm getting a little bit into it because I've had the same argument a million times, but I feel the same way about the Cavs. Like, they are doing historic stuff. One of the best net ratings ever. They have been dominant. Again, they're going to win 70 games probably. That's nearly unheard of. It's only ever happened twice in the NBA, and it's just been a mix of everything. They are a well-rounded team on both sides of the ball. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, all three of them should and likely will be on an All-NBA team. Jared Allen was All-Star caliber this season. Even if he didn't make it, they are extremely deep with a Max Strus, with a DeAndre Hunter over there now, with Ty Jerome, with Isaac Okoro. It's a loaded roster top to bottom. They are extremely talented. They've got the top end talent. They've got a great coach in Kenny Atkinson. And I knew they were going to be good this season. I mean, they were a top 4 seed last year, despite apparently the coaching staff and players being at odds with JB Bickerstaff before he got fired. And they were ridiculously injured last season too. They still racked up a lot of wins. And I was like, hey, if they're healthy this season, they could fight for like a top 2 to 3 seed. I did not think they were going to be running away with the 1 seed over the Boston Celtics. But again, here we are. So yeah, this team is a contender in every sense of the word. They've been entirely dominant. It's never really been close outside of, the first week, 2 weeks of the season. After that, they won 17 straight games to open up the year, and they've just run away with it. Since then, I think they could beat the Boston Celtics. I think they could win the NBA Finals, and I believe we're going to look back and talk about this squad as a legitimately historic one, and we're seeing the beginning of a new juggernaut in the East, which is super cool. I think it's awesome that the Cavs are back and playing this brand of basketball. They're this good without LeBron James. I mean, they're about to have a record that clears any team that LeBron was ever on. That, to me, is so mind-blowing. It's cool to see them back, and it's cool to see a competitor, a very legitimate threat to the Boston Celtics, because coming into the season, they were again the pretty clear favorites, and most people would have told you, yeah, the Celtics are going to win the East again, and they are likely going to win the NBA Finals. They might have some big competition out West, but at least in the East, there's not a lot of worries, because last year, they kind of ran through the East, and sure, the Sixers got better, adding a Paul George, and the Knicks got better. I thought it was going to be them versus the Celtics in the conference finals, but even then, I was like, I'm still going to be surprised if the Knicks win, because I like the idea of Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby as those wings to try and guard Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but overall, are they going to be able to slow that team down? Are they going to be able to consistently score on that potent Celtics defense? They are just so stacked with talent. They were so historically good last season. I think anybody could beat them, but now we've got a new historic team in the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Celtics have shown some vulnerability throughout this season. I mean, Jrue Holiday is not the shooter he once was. That's been a point of concern, and you really need him to kind of ramp it up when you get to the playoffs, because you can't have to take him off the court or feel the need to when you're going up against the Cavs in the conference finals, because you want his defense out there alongside Derek White as that backcourt to slow down Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, who are one of the best offensive backcourts I've ever seen. So you need those guys, but if Drew's not shooting, do you consider swapping him out for somebody else? Porzingis has been in and out of the lineup the entire season with injury, and now this mysterious virus that's going on, which I don't know how viruses spread or anything, but it feels crazy sitting on the bench. Maybe viruses don't spread like that. I have no clue, but yeah, it's caused him to miss a lot of games. Peyton Pritchard is probably going to win 6th Man of the Year. I mean, he's amazing, so that's a big new plus. Al Horford is still really good. He's found the fountain of youth, seemingly. I mean, he was out there locking up Luka Doncic on the perimeter basically anybody you throw at him, he's locking up on the perimeter, and he's like 48 years old. It's still a really good Celtics team, even if there have been some more lapses, it feels like, this season. It's hard to repeat in the NBA. It's extremely difficult. There's a reason outside of the best teams ever, you pretty much never see it, especially when like Jason Tatum was out there playing in the Olympics this summer. You know, he, as their best player, has played so much basketball, yet I do feel like at the moment he's playing some of the best basketball of his career. So yeah, between the improved depth, I guess you could say, with the way Peyton Pritchard is playing, and Sam Hauser's still been great. Now Horford playing the way that he is, and Luke Cornett has become a real serviceable backup big, and the star power, and just overall the resume that the Celtics have with how they, again, ran through the NBA last year. The Celtics are still considered the favorites in the East, and I think that is for good reason, but you're crazy if you don't think the Cavs could beat them. This, to me, is going to be the Eastern Conference Finals matchup. I'm going to be shocked if it isn't, and it's going to be a 7-game series that is going to go all the way down to the wire, because these two teams match up extremely well. You could say either squad's going to win, and I'm not going to blame you whatsoever. Outside of those top two teams, though, is where it gets a little bit murkier, because the Knicks are in that 3 spot, and they do have the talent, theoretically, to try and take down the Celtics, especially if like KP's dealing with injury or someone else. There is a world where they could theoretically beat Boston, even if I don't think it's likely. But I think just a lot has to go right. Like Jalen Brunson right now is dealing with that ankle injury, and that theoretically could bring them down the standings. I don't think it's going to be enough to drop them 4 or 5 games to let the Bucks or the Pacers pass them. So I do think they will be that 3 seed. But yeah, like Brunson's not supposed to be back till early April. OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges have been kind of disappointing, to be honest, as that defensive wing stopper duo. That was supposed to be the big thing that gave them the leg up on Boston, is they have these 2 wing guys to throw it at Jason Tatum and at Jaylen Brown. And honestly, I don't really trust them to slow those guys down. There's also the fact that the Knicks have been unable to beat any of the best teams in the NBA this season. They're like, I think, 0-7, 0-8 against the Cavs, Thunder, and Celtics this year, and if they want to make it to the finals and win it, they're going to have to play the Cavs. They're going to have to play the Celtics for sure in round 2, and likely the Thunder will be waiting for them on the other side of the bracket. So that's a very intimidating pathway when they haven't shown to me that they can beat any of those teams. If there's one of them, then I'm like, maybe they flip that script, but can they flip all 3? I really just don't think so. They play a lot of minutes, and don't get me wrong, like this is still a really good team. I just think it's that the Celtics and Cavs are like historic level teams, where the Knicks are just a really good squad that if everything breaks their way, maybe they break through to the conference finals and pull off what seems like right now to me somewhat impossible. But even when they get there, are they going to beat Cleveland after knocking off Boston in a grueling 7-game series? I just don't think so, which means that the Knicks are probably going to have to go back a little bit to the drawing board this summer. The question is, what are the moves that they make? How do they re-up this team in terms of their depth? How do they improve the defense? I was hoping that would be better this season. I mean, offensively, Cat's been unstoppable. Jalen Brunson is one of the best players in the world. He is an all-NBA level guy. I actually haven't checked if he's going to play enough games to even be all-NBA. It feels like a lot of guys are just dropping like flies and ineligible for all-NBA at this point, so I need to check on the games like that, but I'll do that after the video. Actually, I decided to do it now. He only needs to play 4 more games. He's played 61, so as long as he's back by April 8th, he'll be eligible, and I would imagine he's back by that point. But yeah, Brunson dealing with that injury is unfortunate, but like he's been ridiculous when he's been healthy, and OG and Mikal Bridges have had some monster games. Mikal just hit that game winner. It's a hyper-talented team. I just worry about the minutes that they're playing, the overall depth, and they haven't shown me that they can match up with the best teams in the NBA. So that third squad that feels like, hey, maybe they could be the X factor, I just don't know if I trust them that much, and that's disappointing, I guess I could say, for the Knicks. I don't think they've been bad relative to expectations. I mean, if the Cavs didn't exist, I would say that the Knicks were probably going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. It's just that there's a new juggernaut in the block, so they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. But that brings us to the Bucks, who are in a much more dire situation, because like it's the first season of this for the Knicks. They can still figure it out. With the Bucks, I think they're going to be a first, second round exit, and then what do you do from there? Because you're getting older. They did add Kyle Kuzma at the deadline, and I'll give them credit. He's been better than I was expecting. I thought that was a disastrous trade, and I do still think long-term that was a mistake, because they needed to do more drastic things. They need to pull out bigger stops to try and elevate this team, because you're running out of time with Dame and Giannis. But ultimately, I don't think anything they did at the deadline was going to save them. I was just hoping they would try something a little bit more. Like, Giannis and Dame have both been insane this season. Giannis is going to finish 3rd in MVP voting likely. He's been having a ridiculous season that is kind of getting swept under the rug just because Shea and Jokic have been so insane. Like, he is putting up 30.6 points per game on 60.5% shooting, 12.1 rebounds, 6 dimes. He's become like a legitimate mid-range sniper. It's not even like it's just good for Giannis in terms of his midi at this point. He's just good. at hitting the mid-range jumper, and I never thought that was going to be the case, but it's a new weapon in his toolbox. Dame has had a bit of a bounce-back season. There are some good depth pieces. Like, it's a good team. It's just, again, how do you match up against the Cavs in the second round? I just don't think they can, and maybe they can pull it off because they have Giannis. They've just got one of the best players I've ever watched, but I think their talent level is just significantly lower. They're an older team, too. They're basically all out of assets. I think we're seeing the beginning of the end for the Milwaukee Bucks, because I think when they either go out to the Pacers in the first round or to the Cavs in the second, I really don't see them getting past that. What do? Does Giannis start to angle out? You still have Dame, but he's getting up there in age. He's going to regress at some point. I mean, he's already not the Dame we once knew, but he still is really good. How long is he going to continue to be this level of player as a smaller guard with a lot of mileage on those legs? I don't think you've got a lot of juice left in the tank for this team. There's not a lot of ways to reshape this roster. They're one of the most interesting teams in all of the Eastern Conference to watch. I thought they could take a little bit of a jump this season with new offseason additions and a bounce back year from Dame, but it's not been enough. I mean, they're again hanging right around this spot, and it seems like they're going to end up as a lower seed than they were last season. They had that awful start to the year. They bounced back and forth, but they're just not good enough at this point, so I don't really know where they go from here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And I do think if you told me that Giannis was on a different team by the end of the summer of 2026, about a little over a calendar year from now, I'm not shocked at all. The Indiana Pacers have had a great turnaround this season. They were a team that a lot of people thought could jump in the standings. They have moved up a spot. They were 6 last year. They're 5 right now. And a lot of that has been this second half of the season. They were really bad to begin the year. Halliburton looked terrible. They couldn't get things going. And it felt like maybe Hallie's insanity run was just completely wiped out. Like, it was like, hey, is this guy even good anymore? He is still really good. He's amazing. He's been fantastic since the All-Star break, really ever since that slow start, just consistently putting up like 10 plus times per game, scoring a lot more efficiently. He's looking like the Halliburton that we saw pretty much a majority of last season, which is good. The Pacers need that kind of guy if they want to have any chance of competing in a series against the Cavaliers, which again, with the Bucks, I really just don't think they stand much of a chance, but they are a fun team. I mean, they could at least make it somewhat interesting. Like, Siakam's been fantastic. They've got a lot of depth pieces. Of course, you've got Miles Turner down there. You've got Aaron Nesmith, who's been playing really well. He just had a 30 ball. You've got Andrew Nembhard, who hasn't had the big breakout that people thought he might have, but he could still be really good in a playoff format. We saw that last season with him elevating his game. I honestly think the Pacers are kind of just waiting right now to bring in a third star. To me, they feel like one of the clearest options for a consolidation trade when we go into this summer, where they package like Obi and Nesmith, and maybe it's like a Benedict Mather or a Jarris Walker. Like, they package a few guys together and they add that third star for Siakam and Halliburton to play off of to bring themselves more into the upper echelon of the East. I think that's their pathway this summer or by next deadline. It's just a matter of who that player is going to be. And for the moment, the Pacers are just playing really good basketball. And I do think there's a world where they beat the Bucks in that first round series. I think the two of them could have an amazing battle. I'm excited to see them at full strength, fingers crossed, knock on wood, with the way this season has been going on. I think that this series would be incredible. It would be one of the best first round matchups, would go 6-7 games, and I wouldn't be shocked if either team came out of it. The Pistons are at the 6th spot. Like I said, I never would have thought they'd be here. I felt like they're at least still a year away from being a legitimate playoff team. I thought playing was possible, but I mean, Cade Cunningham has just taken that jump to being right around a superstar level player. He should very well be an All-NBA. Malik Beasley's kind of having one of the best shooting seasons we've ever seen. I don't think people are talking about that nearly enough. Their defense has been one of the best in the league since the beginning of February, right around the trade deadline. You've been missing Jaden Ivey too for a good portion of the season. I still don't know when he's quite going to return. Hopefully it is at some point this season. It was a brutal leg injury for him, and it sucks that he and Cade Cunningham haven't gotten to play off each other throughout this great stretch of basketball, but he's going to come back at some point. Schroeder's been a good veteran addition. Like, Jalen Duren's had some great promise. Asar Thompson, one of the better perimeter defenders in the sport. I've liked a lot of the promise that Ron Holland has shown. Isaiah Stewart's been this enforcer. I think he is the biggest definition of one of those guys in the NBA right now. Tobias Harris has been good. Like, this Pistons team's just good. They're just a good basketball team. You had some veterans, you had some shooting, and suddenly you have a lot more success. Who would have thought? And it's just cool to see them back. I'm actually going to be trying to go to a Pistons playoff game at some point in April, one of their home ones, to see what the atmosphere is like, because I think it's going to be special and easily one of the most exciting teams on my list to watch in playoff basketball this year. I think they're going to be special. The Pistons fans, the city of Detroit, are going to be really into it. They've been one of my must watches pretty much every time they're on TV. You got to tune into Pistons basketball, which is crazy from where they were last season, where they won 14 games. Crazy what a turnaround will do in a coaching change. Again, I don't know how Monty Williams messed up this team that much. Then we have the Hawks at 7. I don't have a lot to say about them. They've been playing a little bit better recently. they lost Jalen Johnson for the season, which really sucks. I think they'd be above 500 and like very, very firmly in that 7 spot if Jalen Johnson didn't miss as much time as he did throughout this year. Trey has been one of the best playmakers in the sport. Reece Shea, I don't know why nobody's talking about him. He's been like a 40% double-digit scorer, 40% from 3 that is, for like a couple months now. Like over his last 20-25 games, he's just doing that consistently. He's been really good for #1 overall pick. I don't know why he's not getting more love for potential rookie of the year. I'm not saying he's got to win over like Jalen Wells or Stephon Castle, but I do think he deserves love and consideration for that award. He's been fantastic. Onyeka Okongwu's had some great moments. LeVert and Niang have been pretty good since they got over there in the DeAndre Hunter trade. The Hawks are just good right now, or maybe not good. I think when Jalen Johnson comes back, they'll be good, but I feel decent about their future. The unfortunate part is that if they end up missing the playoffs, which I think they do get in as like the 7 or 8 seed through the play-in because we get really bad when we move down a little bit. But like if they miss it, then the Spurs get another lottery pick, and we can't let Wemby get more talent like that. I mean, they might already get Cooper Flagg with Wemby out for the rest of the season and De'Aaron Fox shut down. Yeah, we'll have to see on that front. But the Hawks, I mean, I'm feeling better about their future, a lot better now than I was going into the season where I thought, you know, what do they possibly do from here? The Orlando Magic, one of my most disappointing teams this season. It's just the shooting. I need to check what the 3-point percentage is at right now. It's been low 30s basically this entire year. I thought KCP would help. He's been terrible. They're almost at 31%. It's been a good shooting stretch, I guess, for the Magic. They're at 30.9% in 2025. That's 2.8 points lower than the Wizards, who are the second worst 3-point shooting team. That's an 8.1 point gap between them and the Cavs, who are the #1 shooting team. It's been disastrous. Powell has been disappointing, and I think part of that is just that they can't shoot. They can't space the floor at all for him. Franz has been good, but his shot hasn't really been there. Jalen Suggs has dealt with injury. I mean, it's just been a team that's also been battered by injuries, whether it was to Powell or Franz, or Mo Wagner, who was kind of having a career year in the absence of some guys, and then he ends up, I think it was tearing his ACL or Achilles or one of the two, like season-ending ones. Just a nightmare season for the Magic. They desperately need to bring in some shooting. They've got to do whatever they can to get guys that can hit the perimeter shot. It almost reminds me a little bit of like a much better version of the Pistons last year, where they've got these great young talents, and it's like, hey, they could probably pop if they had anybody to help and support them. So hopefully the Magic front office gets in the lab this offseason and does a little bit of that. Yeah, Orlando, a lot of people thought they could take the jump and be like a top 4 or 5 seed. It's definitely not been the case so far throughout this season. The Miami Heat, of course, are sitting at the 9 spot. Trade away Jimmy Butler. Hero has been awesome. Bam. It's been better for him since the beginning of the season, which was absolutely terrible. But yeah, this is a team that I don't think is going to make the playoffs, which as a Thunder fan is great, because if they don't make the playoffs, they get a lottery pick. We get their pick unprotected next year. So shout out to Sam Presti, cooked once again. But yeah, the Heat, I don't think are going to be in the playoffs. I think we do get the top 8 teams as we see them right now, and pretty much a similar order. I don't think the order is going to change that much. Although the Pistons are only 2 games back of the Bucks from the 4 seed, and that's even more insane to me that the Pistons, there is a real world where they end up with a top 4 or 5 seed in the East this season. They were 14 wins last year. Yeah, Cade Cunningham deserves all the credit in the world. The Bulls, they're going to be the 10 seed. They could have tanked, but I mean, Josh Giddey's been playing really well, so shout out to him on that front. They didn't trade Vucevic. He's still around. Zach Collins has been pretty solid as a Bull. That's a weird sentence to say. Yeah, Kobe White's been good. Yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about the Bulls. I really still don't know what they're doing right now. They got to go into the offseason and kind of figure out the direction a little bit more. Then we get to like the really tanking teams. I mean, the Raptors are at 11. They are in this weird scenario where they have paid for a ton of talent with Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. They now have Brandon Ingram on the books. They've got Jakob Poeltl. Like, a lot of money is tied up in this young core, and we still don't know if it works at all, if it's going to be a good team when everybody's out there. Scotty Barnes as well. You know, he got paid recently. I don't know what they're going to look like. There are a lot of people who absolutely hate what they're doing, a lot of people that love it. I'm kind of in the middle where I see the vision with just getting a lot of really good young talent and seeing if it sticks. But I also worry about, you know, if they paid guys too early and now what do they do from here? Or did they just, you know, completely lock themselves in financially to a squad that's at the most a playing team? I still don't think Scotty could be like the guy for them on a championship team. Brandon Ingram can't be, RJ Barrett can't be, Emmanuel Quickley can't be. So who is that guy for them? And sitting at the 11 seed with 24 wins, like that's going to put them in the back half of the lottery drawing. Are they going to be able to get a top pick? Are they going to get lucky and get like a Cooper Flagg or someone like that? Are they going to get somebody that could be that guy? Or are they still kind of stuck in purgatory? Maybe they trade for someone at some point, like where they added Kawhi in 2019. I don't know. The Raptors are in a weird spot. One of the most polarizing teams. Would love to hear your thoughts on them. I think I'm going to do a full video as well in the next 2 days talking about just the state of tanking and like the bottom tier teams in the NBA and what their futures look like. So I'll talk about that with that as well. Speaking of one of those teams, I mean the Sixers. We talked about disasters. I made a full video not too long ago about how the Sixers are one of the biggest disasters players in all of NBA history right now. Paid Paul George $1 billion or whatever, something along those lines. And I thought it was a good addition. I was like, yeah, you had an all-star level player for, no draft picks, no trade assets. You just bring him straight into your cap space after losing Tobias Harris. I thought that was great. I thought Maxey, Embiid, PG, and some pretty solid role players would help them out. And like Yabu's been awesome this season. Jared McCain was amazing at the beginning of his rookie season, but then he went down for the year, and Embiid didn't really look like himself, and now he's out for the year. Paul George, I think, has been shut down. He never looked like the Paul George I thought he was going to be. Maxey, very up and down year for him, trying to play with and without help, carry this team some nights, try to fade into the background. I just think it was confusing for him with his role on a nightly basis. A lot of Sixers fans want Nick Nurse fired. It is a nightmare over there in Philly. And I already know I'm going to trick myself into believing in this team again next year. I can tell you that now, because I do think next year, Maxey, I think he's going to take another year, another step forward. Jared McCain coming back, again, amazing. He was kind of running away with Rookie of the Year at the beginning of the season. Embiid, hopefully he gets a little bit healthier. Paul George, a lot of time to rest now between now and next season. Maybe he gets healthier. That feels like an insane thing to say knowing Paul George, but I mean, maybe it's possible. If they can bring back Yabu, Quentin Grimes has been awesome since he's come into the fold at the deadline. I've liked a lot of what Justin Edwards has shown throughout this portion of the season. Just a lot of the young guys have stepped up. So yeah, I already know I'm going to trick myself into believing the Sixers again next year. Don't worry, just anticipate that. I predict them to be like a top 4 seed. I'm like, hey, maybe they can make the conference finals. Just prepare for that. I promise you that's going to happen. Hopefully I remember this when I make those prediction videos. And then we get to like the bottom of the barrel, the Brooklyn Nets. I say that, and then they're literally tied, or I guess half a game back with the Sixers. They're tied in the win column, 22 wins for each of them. The Brooklyn Nets, Jordi Fernandez is one of the best coaches in the NBA. I mean, it's not really a conversation, in my opinion. You get him some talent, and he's going to elevate a squad significantly. He's already elevating a team that has no business even having close to 22 wins, especially as of late. Like some of the games they've been not even winning, but just competitive in is mind-blowing. They were playing Killian Hayes recently. It's like Tyrese Martin. It's Jalen Wilson. I mentioned Killian Hayes. Nick Claxton's dealt with injury. Cam Johnson's been their one option for a lot of the season because Cam Thomas has been dealing with injury. Now he's shut down for the season, and they were still winning a decent number of games. It's just crazy to me how somewhat productive, somewhat competent this team has been with the talent level. I think Jordi Fernandez is great, and I do think they've got a great direction going for the rebuild. I honestly am excited about the Nets rebuild more than a lot of other ones. The Hornets, again, a year where they're just ravaged by injuries. I don't know if this core's ever going to get healthy. Does that mean they move off of LaMelo Ball in the offseason? They're right now only 2 games back of the Washington Wizards in the tank department. They've got 17 to Wizards, 15 wins. They could catch them and get the top spot, and I mean, if they get Cooper Flag, just everything changes in an instant. There was, of course, the weird midseason Mark Williams for Dalton Connect trade that fell through. I really don't know what's going on. It also sucks that Brandon Miller has missed a majority of the season because to me, this year was like, hey, you've got LaMelo, you've got Trey Mann, you've got Brandon Miller, all these young talents, figure out how they play together, and then none of them stayed on the court, which again is just typical for the Hornets. And with the Wizards, I mean, I tweeted this out yesterday. I actually love what the Wizards are building right now. I think the rebuild is super interesting. Jordan Poole hit a 36-foot game-winning 3 over Russell Westbrook against the Nuggets yesterday. Alex Sarr had a 30-piece. Keyshawn George has been awesome. I think he's going to be a great role player for a while. I think there's star upside with Bub Carrington as a guard. I like a lot of what, Bilal Coulibaly does. He's been dealing with injury as of late, but when he's on the court, I like a lot of his game, especially on that defensive end. Corey Kispert is a really good young wing type of player that I think could be a long-term role player for this team when they eventually get back to relevancy. It's just a super fun roster over there. They brought in some veterans with like Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart who have been playing decently. I mean, they've been like legitimately good team since the trade deadline. I think they're above 500 or right around it, and that's crazy to me. It's the Washington Wizards. They've got 15 wins on the entire season, and most of those have come as of late. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. I like a lot of what the Wizards are doing. Now, don't go too crazy and win too many games and don't get the number 1 pick because I want to see Cooper Flag in Washington, mainly because then he's not in the West and I'm sick of stars coming to the West as a Thunder fan. But also, I'd love to see him just out there in the Eastern Conference with this Washington team. You form that defensive front court of Bilal Coulibaly, of Cooper Flag, of Alex Sarr, and some great guard talent around them, some great young guys. And I mean, I think pretty quickly the Wizards could become one of the more fun young teams in the East. I already think they are, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, that's the state of the Eastern Conference. At this moment, that's where we are at. That's where everybody is. Like I said, I do highly anticipate Cavs versus Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I think there's a lot of other intrigue, a lot of other very interesting series that could go on. Again, like Pistons, Knicks, I'm very excited for. Bucks versus Pacers, the inevitable Celtics, Cavs, even like Cavs, Pacers or Bucks, and Celtics, Knicks in that second round. I don't anticipate anybody upsetting those top 2 teams, but I still think it could be like a 6-7 game series if things really go those underdogs' way. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the East right now. I'd love to hear down below in the comments how you felt about your team, if they're out East at the moment, where do you think the playoffs are going to go, who's in the most intriguing intriguing spot. Is it the Sixers? Is it the Bucks going to this very weird offseason for both of them? Is it the Knicks who are kind of on the cusp? Is it the Cavs who are continuing to try and elevate? I mean, if the Celtics lose this year, do they consider making a big change up in the offseason with guys getting older? I think there was a lot that could come out of different disappointing playoff runs for teams in the East, or just based off the results of what we've seen this regular season. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all those things. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. And yeah, appreciate you watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.